you will improve. And that's what brains are optimized to do. If you have repetitions underneath your belt, if you work towards it, energy flows where focus goes. And so the difference between those two is essentially either I can't or I can.
Easy articulation of growth versus fixed mindset right here. Ready? I can't versus I can't yet.
Yes, 100%.
I can't be a millionaire versus I am not a millionaire yet.
Right.
That is the difference between a fixed and a growth mindset.
Conscious couples, business partners, and singles committed to attracting their dream partner. Welcome to the Conscious Couples podcast, where we share our life, love story, and combined relationship expertise to help you create and consistently cultivate the most magnificent, intimate relationship possible.
Never again will you feel hopeless and alone in your intimate relationship challenges.
Having accumulated thousands of hours coaching conscious couples and individuals all over the world, as well as starting and growing a global business together, Alan and I are here to guide you in all things relationships.
Thank you again for tuning into the one place where it's not about you or me, it's about the we. Conscious couples and individuals from all over the world, welcome back to another episode of the Conscious Couples podcast. For episode number 21, we are getting up there. Does your partner have a fixed mindset? So before we start, as always, thank you and shout out to Next Level Podcast Solutions for producing this show, audio, video, all of the above. In book club, we're reading a book called Mindset by Carol Dweck, and it talks all about a fixed mindset, Dr. Carol Dweck. And it talks all about a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. I think that's a good place to start. As always, ladies first, can you please explain to our listeners what a fixed versus growth mindset is in case they don't know, although they probably do?
Okay, so yes, at a high level, fixed versus growth mindset is the concept. If you have a fixed mindset, there is a belief that science has shown that is not true based off of neuroscience. So the fixed mindset believes that I can't do something. When you look at, for example, let's say a math problem. If you look at a math problem and your brain's go-to is, I can't do this, you actually have a fixed mindset around your abilities there. A growth mindset would look at the same exact math problem and say, I might not feel super comfortable and I might not get the right answer, but I'm going to try. I'm going to give it a go. It's a growth mindset. And there's this theory that Dr. Carolyn Dweck, a neurologist and I believe a neurophysiologist as well, incredible brain doctor, she's brought to the table what's called the theory of neuroplasticity. And as a listener, I think it's important to bring that forward because if you've ever heard you can't teach an old dog new tricks, that was for so long the idea that people thought you cannot change someone once they're set in their ways. You can't change things because all of the brain research in the 80s and the 70s had very limited data on what the brain was actually capable of. They thought that the brain was done growing and you couldn't learn anything after it was like 24, 25 years old. The brain was stopped developing at that time frame. What brain scientists all over the world now have shown and proven in their data, in their studies, and so much of this research that Dr. Carolyn Dweck brings forward in that book is the fact that brains are always able to adapt. It does not matter what age you have. You will always be developing new neural pathways, i.e. new ways of learning things, if you have the belief that you can. And so the difference between a growth and a fixed mindset is essentially what your belief system is around your ability of intelligence. So there's two very basic forms of intelligence. So if you're someone that doesn't believe in their abilities and looks at a math problem and says, I just can't do it, you have what is called the entity theory of intelligence. You don't believe that you can change. You believe you're born with this understanding of mathematics in this case. And you don't believe you can have any progress if you just try to learn a little bit about it. Whereas if you're someone that really does look at that math problem and say, I might not know the full answer, but I can work on this. You have what's called the incremental theory of intelligence, which is essentially, if you work on it, you will improve. And that's what brains are optimized to do. If you have repetitions underneath your belt, if you work towards it, energy flows where focus goes. And so the difference between those two is essentially either I can't or I can.
So the fixed mindset has a deep belief that you are the way you are and you cannot change that. You're either good at math or you're not. Mm-hmm. You're good at science or you're not. You're good at basketball or you're not.
You're born with this and you can't improve it.
Yeah, it's a natural talent focus, genetic focus. Mm-hmm. And there's so much science on epigenetics and neuroscience and neuroplasticity about functional, chemical, and structural changes in the brain that show that, quite frankly, there's very little that we're not capable of incrementally over the long term.
Yes.
And you could have someone who had a natural predisposition to, hand-eye coordination, play basketball, mm-hmm. and someone who works hard every day for 10 years to get good at basketball. And the person who works hard every day to improve is going to wipe the walls, for lack of better phrasing, with the person who had the natural talent. But what happens when someone who has the natural talent works hard? And so that's what it is when you take someone who has a genetic inclination mm-hmm. and a natural proclivity towards something, mm-hmm. and then also apply the incremental growth mindset. Mm-hmm. That's the sweet spot of what we now refer to as a genius zone. But I digress. Mm-hmm. In intimate relationships, I was just reading in book club this past yesterday. Mm-hmm. And we talked in book club about a fixed mindset in relationships and how if you have a fixed mindset in your relationship, it's going to cause a lot of problems because it's either meant to be or it's not. And when you start facing challenges, you start to believe, oh, we must not be meant to be. And if you start to believe that, then obviously you're not going to work on it and you're going to eventually separate. Exactly.
Yep.
And so she says there's 3 ways that a fixed mindset can complicate a relationship. Mm-hmm. You can believe you have a fixed mindset. One partner can have a fixed mindset. Both can have a fixed mindset. Or you think the relationship is fixed, mm-hmm. meaning the relationship can't improve.
Stuck in its ways.
And so the question becomes this, if you believe that your relationship can't improve and that you're either meant to be or not, then you're going to have a lot of challenges later on in life. And so what Emilia and I, what this podcast is built upon, not just this episode, but this podcast, it's injecting a growth mindset into all intimate relationships of, listen, mm-hmm. you can improve yourself, you can improve your relationship through learning, through mm-hmm. skill development, through communication, through trust, through working on your relationship. And I know we weren't intending to go down this road, but I shared this on book club. Mm-hmm. I interviewed someone named Tori Leto. She spent 13 years doing relationship therapy with couples. Mm-hmm. And she said it's so interesting, and I agree with her so strongly on this. She's like, we understand that it takes hard work to build a career.
Yep.
We understand that it takes hard work to build a body. Mm-hmm. We understand that it takes hard work to build a home and to sustain a home or renovate a home. But for whatever reason, whether it be Hollywood or movies or stories or whatever, we believe that this happily ever after, that intimate relationships shouldn't require any effort. They shouldn't require any work. And so if you or your partner have fallen victim, for lack of better phrasing, to this mindset, mm-hmm. there's a way that you can identify that and there's a way that you can change it. And what we want to do in this episode is help you identify where a fixed mindset might be really hurting the growth of your relationship.
One of the things, too, that I want to mention, because I know you and I study this a lot, and we've had a lot of personal experience, not only, in our former relationships, but also with family members, with community members, friends, colleagues, but also we see this all the time in clients, is that oftentimes fixed mindsets, it's you catch contagion when you're around one or the other. So say, for example, you grew up in a family that has a lot of fixed mindsets. You likely will inherit that because you're modeling what you know and what is comfortable to you. Whereas if you grew up in a family that had a lot of growth mindset or big growth mindset, you likely also inherited that mindset. So be mindful in the fact that with this conversation, you probably contracted, for lack of better words, the mindset that you have and currently hold.
Yeah.
There are instances that, might not be to that point, but when we work with our clients and what we see is that if there is a partnership where there is one that does have a fixed mindset, it usually started because their parents or their grandparents or whoever their caregivers were also had a fixed mindset in a specific regard. For example, a client that I've been with, they have their father or their grandfather, whoever raised them, had the belief to what you just said, that relationships, they're just kind of, you get married and after that, this is what the wife does. This is what in a heterosexual relationship, this is what the husband does. And if it doesn't work out, just be quiet, shut up and just, happy wife, happy life. And there's not a lot of work that needs to get involved in that. And so this person inherited that belief system when it comes to their relationship. And so as a result, they're not working proactively. Now they are, but they weren't working for so long of their lives proactively to try to put in the work to make the relationship better, because this is just how things are. Once you get partnered up, things just work out. And if you guys have challenges or problems, that's just how it is. So this individual inherited that. So for the premises of this conversation, I think that that's really important to recognize, because if you're listening to this episode, you probably know that if your partner does have a fixed mindset, you've probably also seen that in their family members, if they're still around, or friends that they have or whatnot. And it's probably really challenging if you're the person with the growth mindset to see that, because oftentimes your partner who might have the fixed mindset doesn't see that themselves. And they certainly don't want to admit that, because why? When you do admit that, then something has to change. And likely some part of them needs to evolve. And that can be really scary. So, babe, I think you have a story that would be really helpful for this episode to help ground people in what that might look like. And then we're going to dig into specifically what are some of the behavioral tendencies that people can look for to prime their mind of okay, this is actually a great indicator that my partner does in fact have a fixed mindset. And while he or she or they might not admit it to themselves, this is what I can do to kind of help them see that, because it might feel like you're running up a hill with a giant anchor attached, and you might feel like you're the bad person here. And that's not the case.
I just had that moment listening to you on this episode, this podcast just being as authentic as possible on this show. It brings up so much for me, these topics. Because while you were talking about the fixed mindset and how you might have a partner who has a fixed mindset, I was going through my past.
Yeah.
And it's so clear. It's so clear now.
I know. Me too.
Because it's they just didn't believe they could change. So why would they try to change?
Yeah.
And
they might have projected that on you.
Yeah. So if you saw me get sad right there, it was, there's just a lot of, I think that there's some truth to this, a lot of truth to this. I think that ignorance is really, can be very devastating. And I didn't know when I was in my early 20s, mid 20s, even late 20s, I didn't really know about fixed versus growth mindset. I mean, I did. Same. At 26, I learned about the growth mindset, but I didn't learn about it in relationships.
It wasn't your verbiage probably used at school.
I know. And in hindsight, had I known that the fixed mindset was the problem, I would have done things very, very differently, because I didn't know that so if you do have big goals and dreams, obviously you believe in a growth mindset. You believe in yourself. You believe in yourself, and you believe that you can achieve those things, and you can believe that you can get closer, smarter, better, whatever. And it's so hard to fathom a world where you don't believe you can improve or change yourself. It feels so difficult to fathom that. Yeah. But and remember this is the hard part about this. It's not conscious. No. You're not your partner's not consciously saying, I don't believe in myself. Right. No, they just don't deep down believe in themselves. And so this causes all these issues. So I do have a story. I have several from my own past, but I have a story that I think is really good and representative of this. So I have a client, I do business coaching with people all over the world, and this one client is an extremely aspirational, goal-oriented dream chaser, and she's got a lot of really big things going on, multiple businesses, and she was with a partner for several years, 3 years in fact, and she recently broke up with this partner, or they broke up. I'm not sure who ended it in particular, but I think it was a mutual agreement. But for the longest time coaching this person, she would say how like she doesn't feel heard or seen in her goals, because every time she would try to talk about her goals or her dreams, which is such a big part of who she is, my favorite part of who she is.
Yeah.
Her partner would like really avoid those conversations, or and she even, you know, and again, I'll keep this anonymous always, but you know, she said that her partner actually called her delusional, like you're delusional, and she's like, well, Facebook doesn't think so, and all these other companies that are, you know, all that, and so again, I've been there so many times where I realize now that my partner thought I was delusional, and they didn't say that necessarily, but now it's so clear. Oh, no wonder why I didn't feel supported. You thought I was full of it. You thought I was just saying stuff. And again, it is what it is.
Hi, everybody. I'm Caleb, and this is my beautiful wife, Angela. We're pretty new clients to Al and Emilia and their conscious couples coaching.
Yeah, I think we started back in early 2022, around February, and our relationship has completely shifted in a few short months.
I think one of the biggest takeaways from working with them was their communication, which I believe is an obstacle for most couples. I was talking to Ange in a way that I would understand, but it wouldn't connect to her, which caused some arguments. But Al and Emilia were able to point that out, and now I can talk to her how she's going to understand. She can do the same for me.
Yes, our communication is way better than it's ever been. We've been together for about 6 years now, and as well as just really figuring out what our core values personally are, but as well as what they are in our relationship. So being able to communicate from that space is really valuable. So thank you, Alan and Emilia, for everything you've done and for leading the way.
This podcast talking about these things is a lot of growth for me.
And why? Because if they were in your shoes, they wouldn't.
Exactly. They didn't believe in themselves. So how could they believe? Think about this. And this is one thing that I'm really starting to share a lot with people. For anyone listening right now, how can someone give you what they don't have?
Right.
How can they believe in your dreams when they don't believe in dreams in general? How can they believe in your goals and a brighter future when they deep down don't believe in a brighter future, period?
Yeah.
And so if someone is hopeless and nihilistic and doesn't believe in themselves, it's going to be very difficult for them to be like, hell yeah, you got this, right?
Yeah.
They might not want to see you fail. They might not want to see you in pain. They might just not want to lose you. And there's a lot of reasons underneath this. And I'm not making that okay, because I think there's a place to really take responsibility for taking the wind out of people's sails. But what I will say is that this client of mine's partner would avoid the conversation or call her delusional every single time. And it got to the point eventually where she's like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, what the real issue was is that this person has a fixed mindset. He was much more of a day-to-day guy, kind of doing the steady job thing, going with the flow, very in the moment. She used to say that, like, he lives in the moment better than I do. Right. I remember thinking, like, yeah, but that's not necessarily a good thing. Like, he's probably not building towards a brighter future as much as you are.
Right.
Again, obviously, I'm a very future-oriented person, so I tend to think that's important.
Right.
But for the purpose of this episode, the question that I wrote down to have you ask yourself, 2 of them. The first one is, what conversations do I tend to avoid, or what conversations make me uncomfortable, to your point, sweetheart?
Yeah.
And another question is, what conversations tend to make my partner uncomfortable? What conversations tend to make does my partner avoid? You've shared this with me before too, sweetheart. So just to bring you behind the scenes, Emilia wants to learn math. She wants to master math, finance, business, and those are things that I've studied my whole life, and I feel
I used
very
to have a
competent
fixed mindset around math.
Okay.
I think. Yeah.
I think that
It's changed.
For a long time, just to share this, Emilia was a little bit frustrated with how much I would avoid teaching her those things.
Yeah.
And the reason why, I think, is because teaching people those things would bring out a very calculating math part of me that would tend to hurt my relationships. And now in hindsight, I understand why that is. But why was I avoiding those conversations? I now understand I don't believe in my own ability to teach you what I know,
Right.
and I'm afraid it's going to disconnect us.
Right.
So I have a little bit of a fixed mindset around believing in my own abilities to teach. I know I can learn it.
Right.
I'm not convinced that I can teach it
Yet.
or that you will learn it and actually take it in.
Right.
Yet. Exactly. Yet. And this is the best easy articulation of growth versus fixed mindset right here. Ready? I can't versus I can't yet.
Yes. 100%.
I can't be a millionaire versus I am not a millionaire yet.
Right.
That is the difference between a fixed and a growth mindset. And in this episode today, we want to help you climb out of this fixed mindset thing because the future cannot get brighter without growth.
One thing that I would add to that too, going back to your comment about what makes me uncomfortable or what makes my partner uncomfortable. So when someone is uncomfortable or there's a tendency to avoid something, it's usually like, I don't want to say it's not their fault because I don't want to relinquish someone from the responsibility to actually looking in the mirror and understanding where they're insecure or where they might be avoiding, because that might be and likely is really disconnecting you, especially if you're the growth-oriented human in this relationship and you happen to have a fixed mindset that you are trying to work with in your relationship, be it your entire partner's mindset or just one facet, for example, in this ability to teach, right? So when a partner is avoiding that, it's again, because they're uncomfortable. When we are uncomfortable, our brain is saying, we're going to have to change here. Something's going to have to evolve. And I don't know how to do that. When the brain thinks that, the brain is like chewing up tons and tons of calories, which from a physiological perspective, the brain doesn't want to do. Brain just wants to keep you like chilling, right? Because from an evolutionary perspective, the brain just wants to relax and keep you
Conserve energy.
Yeah, conserve energy. And so when you're insecure, that means you're out of security, you're out of control.
You're
or
in danger.
At least it feels that way to the brain. So there's this part of your brain that's putting you on high alert. And the reason underneath that is what we talked about. There's a lack of belief in someone's personal ability, their belief in themselves, and what that typically looks like when you're in a conversation, to that example that you gave of your client. They're projecting that onto their partner. So they are giving what they have, and what they have is a lack of belief.
Yeah, exactly.
And so
that really clicked for me when you were talking like
Yeah.
earlier. That's what I meant, is I now realize that that's been happening
yeah,
pretty much
a lot
our
of
entire
us
lives.
have that
Yeah.
all the time, and we've experienced that in one way, shape, or form. So does your partner have a fixed mindset? To Alan's point, if they're avoiding something, oftentimes what will happen is the ego won't let them know that they have a fixed mindset, right?
Yeah,
So
I know.
That's the biggest challenge here, because if you were to just go and approach your partner, which by the way, this is direct communication, and this would set off the ego, and the ego in this instance wouldn't take any accountability. If you were to go up to your partner, whom you know kind of through this episode, you're like, yeah, they definitely have a fixed mindset in this arena. If you were to take a direct communication approach and say, hey, babe, you have a fixed mindset here, let's work through that. Their ego is going to get triggered.
Yeah.
And they're going to say,
feel attacked.
no, I don't.
No, I don't. Yeah.
No, I don't. They're going to avoid.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be combative. And that is going to disconnect you even more. So I would suggest for those of you who do recognize some of these behavioral tendencies and patterns with your partner, they could be avoiding, they could be really defensive, they could shut down, or they could kind of just like freeze altogether when you approach something that maybe you're really passionate about. Like if you're talking about dreams and goals with your partner and they just like shut down like a switch, that's likely also an indicator that they have a fixed mindset. Why? Because it's setting off their stress response. They're so stressed because they don't necessarily know how to contribute to that conversation. And in this state, if you recognize that your partner is this, I would really suggest an indirect approach in terms of communication, which looks like the opposite of what I just said. Hey, babe, you have a fixed mindset. Let's talk about it. Don't do that because the ego is going to get triggered. What I would suggest is say, hey, babe, I listened to this awesome podcast, and it asked the question, does your partner have a fixed mindset? And I think there might be something in our relationship that could really grow if we explore this topic.
Fire.
And
Way
you
better.
could just suggest the episode, or you could put it on subconsciously in the background when you guys are doing laundry or when you guys are, chilling. You can put it in the background because at least the subconscious mind is starting to pick up on these things. And though you might not be actively listening to it, it could be something that is absorbed by your partner's subconscious, which goes and bypasses the ego. And so that indirect communication is a far better approach if you recognize that your partner does have a fixed mindset, but yet you don't know how to approach that communication. That's a great way to do it.
I think the best way would be to ask them, send them this episode, ask them, say, I think this could really help us. I think this would be awesome. And if they don't listen or aren't open to it, there's your indicator that they probably have a fixed mindset. Yeah. I think it's really important. And what I will say, being 33 years old, having had many, many intimate relationships in my life, the main difference in this relationship, I think, out of everything, there's a lot of differences, don't get me wrong. I mean, core aspirations, core values, core beliefs, everything that we have created in this podcast, 21 episodes, it really is a journey of all the things that we believe are making the difference for us, and we want to teach them. But you just believe in yourself so much, and you're so growth-oriented, and your ability to change, grow, and evolve is so high that anything I'm great at never makes you super insecure. And it's so nice. It's so nice to... I had a team member recently. She said, it is so nice to be around you, Alan. You want to know why? I don't have to hide my greatness.
Yeah.
I don't have to hide my greatness and pretend I'm worse than I really am. I just get to shine my greatness, and it doesn't bother you. You want me to amplify it. And I think that that's what we want to do on this podcast. We want to take your relationship's greatness and we want to dial it up. Yeah. And it's going to be uncomfortable because that light is really shiny. And it's like when you've been in a dark room and you go outside and it's like really bright and it takes a minute to acclimate. So let's sit down with your partner, send this episode to your partner, or sit down with your partner, listen to it. Figure out where you might have a fixed mindset. Maybe you both have growth mindsets, but there's a couple areas that have a fixed mindset, like the math thing with Emilia and I.
Yeah.
Or maybe one partner has a fixed mindset, or maybe you're sitting there like, I'm the one with the fixed mindset. Holy crap.
Right.
That's a little less likely because obviously you're listening to a podcast about growth. But
you'd
either
be
way,
surprised. There might be some things like in the garden that are like sneaky fixed mindsets.
And the only wrong answer, as I always say, is to sit back and remain the same.
Yeah.
When you have new awareness, you have a new responsibility to take positive action. And I really wish that I had this awareness when I was younger. I really do.
Or even the vocabulary too,
Yeah, the fixed mindset versus the growth. Yeah. Yeah. Shout out to Caroline Dweck for just amazing work in the world, huh? Yeah. Holy crap.
The brain scientists that are bringing their data, their research, and the findings to the forefront. Like, I really strongly encourage people to really look at that, because here's the thing: the brain, we all have one, and we know like nothing about it.
I know,
and it's not shared. Like, this is how behavioral tendencies appear. That like those things aren't shared openly. And if you were to think about learning anything about the brain, like, probably you don't.
We didn't learn any neuroscience in school.
We learned nothing about the brain.
We learned nothing about the brain,
which is
wild.
Crazy because
everything is the brain. Yeah,
everything comes back down to how the brain processes and interprets information.
I know. Emilia and I. This is a little side tangent, but we are intending together to get our PhDs in neuroscience, and that's a dream in the working.
Excited.
We have not, again, in the working, as in we're talking about it. That is, believe it or not, the first step. Yeah, with the growth mindset. We are incrementally talking about it, which eventually will lead into
action,
manifesting it, action.
Which will have evidence.
So thank you all for listening. We appreciate it. Before we go, we are over. I can tell by how asleep my leg is. That's always the timer. We set a timer for 20 minutes. I think we're around 25 minutes based on how asleep my leg is. So before we go here, again, what conversations do I tend to avoid? What conversations does my partner tend to avoid? What conversations are uncomfortable for us to have? That's where all the gold is.
Yeah.
The gold is buried where you least want to dig. So important. Every single weekend, every Saturday, Emilia and I sit down and we have a free relationship talks conversation with a listener of this show. We actually have 2 coming up. Shout out to Lynn. Shout out to Alicia. Super pumped for the next 2 weekends.
So excited for them.
The link in the show notes, half-hour free session. Let's talk relationships. If you feel like you might have a fixed mindset, we can help you. Book that at the link in the show notes, and we're super excited to meet you. We love meeting our listeners.
We really do. Yeah. And there was going to be something that I was going to say about the fixed mindset, how to like, one of the things too, just really quick before I go into the next invitation, like if you notice that your partner has a fixed mindset and again, they're avoiding, a question that you could just, I think one of the most beautiful things in partnerships is you can be the mirror that helps your partner see what they can't. Like you have been so much for me. And when you can say, babe, I'm noticing that you're kind of shutting down whenever I talk about this stuff, Like, can you help me understand why? Just that question in and of itself could crack open the dialogue that you two can have that can help uncover the fact that there is a fixed mindset here. Babe, I notice every time I talk about my dreams and goals, you get really defensive. Like, what's underneath that? Help me understand, because I want to connect here. This is really important to me, and I want you to be right here with me. You know, that again, indirect, nonviolent communication can really help in your relationship. So please put on our calendars. We would love to meet you and love to help facilitate those conversations if you feel as though that would be beneficial for you.
There's an indirect way too of like, hey, let's meet these people.
Yeah.
And don't worry, if anyone has a fixed mindset on those calls, we're going to uncover it. No, I'm just joking. But it'll be really good.
With
Seriously,
lots
it'll
of
be
love.
good. With lots of love.
For
All
sure.
the love.
Yeah. So, and then also every single month, you've probably heard, if you're a listener, every single month we have a virtual relationships talk event where you can get around other people that are consciously trying to improve their relationships, conscious couples and conscious singles. And no one event is the same, which is really cool because we dive into a new topic every single month and they're always absolutely incredible. The breakthroughs that are there, you know, I'm really just grateful for the community that we've built through that. But for this month, August 11th at 7 p.m., we're going to be digging into building your future as a team. And one of the things why this is going to be such an incredible event is because when you get into a relationship, you likely have a vision or an idea of how you guys want this to go. Maybe one of you, maybe not both of you, but one of you do. And how can you get on the same page to build towards that brighter future that maybe one or both of you want? There's a lot of challenge that comes there and a lot of like, how do we do this? So Alan and I are going to take what we've learned not only in our own personal lives, but also coaching so many people around the world. And how can you do this together, building those dreams as a team? And that's what this event is all about.
If you've ever heard of a vision board, now imagine a vision board, but a we board that you create with your partner. A we board. Kind of cool.
Kind of cool.
It's like a wakeboard, but you don't ride it. I'm just joking. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it's kind of like a Ouija board, but like I'm realizing like that's very woo woo. So like, it's not really like that, but like, you know, it's really good from like a Pinterest. If you like love Pinterest,
exactly.
And you create your own vision board, it's like that, but for the we,
but for your
you
relationship.
And your relationship.
Yep.
Which again, relationships take work, and especially extraordinary ones.
Yep.
So come to this event. Get around other humans that are trying to evolve into a better version of themselves with their partner and really dig into this stuff because it is so ridiculously worth it.
If you don't feel like you're on the same team as your partner, building towards the same future, that event is for you. Thank you so much. As always, it's not about me or you. It's about the we. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Conscious Couples podcast. We love connecting with the Conscious Couples community, so please make sure you follow us on Instagram. I am at Evolve with Emilia, and Alan is a Lazaros 88.
Also, if you or your partner resonated with this episode, leave us a review at the link in the show notes, and please share this with someone you love and care about.
Until next time, remember, it's not about you or me. It's about
the we.